These comics are rated R for nudity and violence, just like I like 'em.
Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today.
Before I get into this review of Cat Claw, I wanted to give everybody an update on the SJS Direct 2024 catalog. Now, the SJS Direct 2024 catalog kicked off in March with John Haynes' Illuminati, which is now available in paperback and on digital formats such as Draft Digital, Amazon's Kindle, and on Google Play. And last month, the SJS Direct catalog continues with the newest Isis series book, Isis Dark Incubus, which is now available on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format, and is available in digital format at all other online booksellers, and is also available at retailers like Barnes & Noble and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And you definitely want to pick this one up because of the fantastic art on the cover by Bill Walko and Rovelio Mel's awesome colors. And you also want to pick this one up because this is the start of the third story arc in the Isis series. And as you can see, this is a really big book, which is over 150 pages. So this one, again, is a major entry point if you're a new reader for the Isis series, and you don't want to miss this Isis series book, Isis Dark Incubus. Now, in May, we are going to be, on May 24th, releasing Esteem Horror in the Hamptons, and this will be the third and final book of the SJS Direct 2024 catalog, and you can pre-order your copy on Kindle right now, or wait until May 24th to get a paperback copy. And in addition to those three books, we also have a refresh cover on the first Isis series book by Bill Walko, with colors by Nick Capone for Isis Amari's Revenge, and this new edition has been re-edited to clean up some of the typos and sentence structure, so you're going to be getting a brand new edition of Isis Amari's Revenge. And again, this is available right now in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Now, many of the social justice warriors of today like to say that there are no strong women inside of superhero comics, and they are obviously lying, because when I look at this comic, Cat Claw, it shows me that there were strong heroines in comics, but many of those in the industry are being disingenuous, like Gail Simone, who want to say that there were no strong heroines in comics, and that's a reason why she needed a job. However, I was online a couple of weeks ago, and I discovered this Cat Claw comic online, and after discovering this Cat Claw comic online and quickly studying the history of it and its creator, Bane Kerac, I began to see that yes, there were strong heroines in comics back in the 80s, and strong heroines that were exceptionally well done compared to what we're getting today. Because what people like Gail Simone love to say is that there were no heroines, because what she's hoping to do is look to use things like her Women in Refrigerators website in an effort to get jobs for herself, and not really want to go dig deep into the history of comics to find those heroines that have been a part of independent comics for many years. Now, Cat Claw came out back in the 1980s when Bane Kerac was working at a comic company that wanted to create comics that featured superheroes, and they wanted him to make a character similar to that of Marvel Comics Spider-Man. And this comic that came out in Serbia featured a strong heroine in the Cat Claw character and featured a very compelling story. And I'd have to say that this comic basically was the precursor to all of the Bad Girl comics that started in 1991 with Everett Hartsoe's Razor. Now, Cat Claw basically, again, came out in the 80s and was a part of what many in the 80s call the black and white craze. And during the black and white craze, we got a lot of great indie comics and some pretty bad ones during that time, like John Tar. but many of these concepts were fresh and unique, and I'd have to say Cat Claw basically was ahead of its time, because the whole concept of Cat Claw was very similar to that of the one that was presented in 2004's Catwoman, which starred Halle Berry, and that whole concept basically was a disaster on film as related to the Halle Berry film Catwoman, because one, it wasn't the original Catwoman from DC Comics, and two, the concept was so poorly executed that it wasn't one that anyone could ever connect with and care about, because the character of Patience Phillips was one-dimensional and really had no depth or layers whatsoever. However, Cat Claw, also known as Carol Connor, is somebody who has a lot of depth and really rich character development over the course of these 9 issues, and I was lucky enough to go on eBay and pick up a lot of these books, which include issue number 2, issue number 3, issue number 5, issue number 6, and the very rare issue number 9, and I have to say that this was one of the best series to feature a heroine that I've read in years, and this was a book that was way ahead of its time as related to the overall craft of storytelling. Now, these books are over 30 years old, and that's really shown to me by the plastic bags that they're in, because these are real plastic bags what we used to use back in the 80s when we used to collect comics, because I still got a lot of books in these kind of plastic. And these days we use Mylar to put comics in, like I recently put my John Haynes at Death Store comic, which you can find on Lulu.com. I mean, we put our books in these kinds of bags these days, but back in the day when I was collecting as a teenager, this is the kind of plastic we used to put our comics in, and these books are in excellent condition to say that they're 30 years old. I mean, this book is a reprint of the 1980s book, and it was made by Eternity Comics, and look at how crisp this book is as related to the front and the back. And the second issue of Cat Claw is again in an excellent condition, but I wanted to share this book with you so that you could see how heroines were done by a great craftsman like Bane Kerac. Now, this is a reprint with Eternity Comics, and we see Cat Claw in action on the splash page, and Bane Kerac deliberately made his art look like old Spider-Man comics from the late John Romita Sr., and we see that Carol is basically starting to build up her costume, and she runs into a lizard-type character in this werewolf, and she's looking to get the material for her costume, and as she's in this action, we see that she's got the powers of a cat, and she's got the story similar to Spider-Man. So this book is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun from page to page. And again, the action is absolutely fantastic. In this Cat Claw comic book, I mean, in the second issue, again, the pacing is just exceptionally well done. The action and the art really pop. And it's a shame that we never got a color edition of Cat Claw. It's a shame we never really got color editions of this book, because this book, I believe, would really sell well. Now, one of the things that makes this book very interesting is that, yes, it does take the same concept that they had in the 2004 Catwoman movie, but because Bane Kerac executes it differently, it basically reads like a really great story. A great story that really reminds me of filmmaker Paul Verhoeven, the guy who made classic movies like RoboCop and Total Recall. And in movies like RoboCop and Total Recall, Paul Verhoeven he loved to amp it up with a lot of violence, nudity, and sex, just like I like them in R-rated movies. And these Cat Claw comics are a bit R-rated, so I can't really show too much, because when it comes to the way Bane Kerac presents heroines, he presents them the same way he would present a man, in showing the woman being just like a man, having to deal with battle-ravaged outfits and having to deal with a lot of things being revealed in this comic. And again, this basically makes this comic rated R for nudity and violence, and that's why I can't show too much, because the action here is really intense. And again, the action here is really intense and does not go out here and skimp on the action. And this first story, because there's 3 stories in here, show you Carol Connor in action and show Carol Connor in action as she's getting her costume to become Cat Claw. And again, the Cat Claw stories, again, have lots of great action and adventure and are well paced. I mean, extremely well paced with really good action. That first story introduces us to Cat Claw's new costume as related to this splash again, and it really comes alive. And then we get built into another story which builds into a mystery, and we see a lot of things again looking very similar to Peter Parker when he was Spider-Man in action. We see Carol and her friend Jenny Jones, not related to the talk show, but again, she's hanging out with her friend, and all of a sudden this guy winds up being tossed out a window, and we see everything happen. And I really love the way this art is done. It just really pops and reminds me a lot of John Romita Sr. and the way he would make the action explode. And really, I love this whole comic. I mean, absolutely fantastic comic. And I'm glad that I finally discovered it, because this comic was basically buried for a long time in the annals of history as related to the era of Bad Girl comics. But everything here in Bane Kerac's Cat Claw is the precursor to everything we saw in most of the Bad Girl comics of the 90s. But unlike many of those comics, this comic has a really fantastic story, really relatable characters, lots of cool action and adventure, and is one of those books that really deserves to get more spotlight here in the US, because Cat Claw was a very popular character in Serbia and Europe, and was so popular in Serbia and Europe that this character wound up becoming a star of a musical. I mean, that's how popular this character was, and the character still has a following right now, a following that's so strong that they basically released an omnibus book of all of the Cat Claw adventures. And sadly, while the Cat Claw adventures ended here in America with issue number 9, which is very hard to get. However, even though Eternity Comics stopped publishing Cat Claw comics, Cat Claw still continued to go on after this 9th issue in the Magnum comic book in Europe. And we had more Cat Claw adventures, but sadly, all of us in the US, the adventures of Carol Connor as Cat Claw ended with this 9th issue on a cliffhanger. And if you want to see the story end, you've got to go and track down all of those old Magnum comics in Europe, which is something hard to do. Now, recently, a publisher did come out with a Cat Claw omnibus, which features all of the stories that were published and translated in the US, and also features many of the stories that were published in Serbia and Europe. And I wish that we could get that omnibus here in the US, because Carol's story is just as compelling as Peter Parker's, and her story is one that I would love to finish. And from the just fantastic art that Bane Kerac has presented and the storytelling he's presented in Cat Claw, I really would love to see the end of this story, because this looks like one of, again, the best comics to feature a heroine that come out of the 80s that nobody talked about in America in the 90s, and basically is one of those comics that is a precursor to the Bad Girl comic craze that started 1 year later with Everett Hartso's Razor. This is a cemented fact of history. Everett Hartso opened the door for all of the bad girls to go through with Razor, and showed us that there is a market for heroines, when they're well done, can really get guys excited about reading books with superheroines, because with Cat Claw, we see that Bane Kerac doesn't pull any punches as he puts Carol through her paces. I mean, Carol basically has put through all sorts of challenges, and her costume gets through all sorts of challenges in trying to stay together, whether it be her fishnet tights or her leotard. I mean, they basically do not pull any punches here in Cat Claw, in that the women are shown to be on the same level as the men in dealing with all of the struggles of life. I mean, Carol deals with problems in her life the way Peter Parker does, and she also deals with problems in her life as Cat Claw. And it really shows that if you have a good writer and a good creative team, you can go out here and present a really a heroine in a fantastic fashion, similar to the way I do in many of my books, like those in the ISIS series. I mean, originally I planned for ISIS to be a comic book like Cat Claw, but I just didn't have the money to do it. And I'd still love to do an ISIS comic book because I know there's a market for books featuring heroines where they're not treated like jobbers like they are in many Marvel and DC comics, or they are put up against jobbers like they are in Marvel and DC comics. And this is why books like Captain Marvel, Ms. Marvel, and even Wonder Woman don't sell, because they never put the women through their paces, never put them through adversity like I do with books like in the ISIS series, like Amari's Revenge, or books like ISIS Dark Incubus, where I put the goddess next door through her paces, similar to what you see in Cat Claw, where the characters have to go through character transformation arcs. And that's one of the things I loved about this book, is that Carol has to go through challenges and obstacles and conflicts. And while many of these feminists in comics will say that that there's no strong heroines in comics, you have people like Gail Simone saying that there's no guys creating these comics. Bane Kerac was creating this kind of heroine, but many of the women don't want to talk about it because, one, it's created by a man, and two, it doesn't fit their narrative as related to heroines. But here we have, with Cat Claw, shown us that you can make a book featuring a heroine, and she can be very popular, because this character was very popular in Serbia and was picked up at Eternity Comics to be shared with people back in the 90s at the height of the comic craze. So it shows that there was a market for heroines, but the problem is you have many of these feminist and social justice warriors who want to say that there are no heroines, but Cat Claw basically debunks all of those narratives, because we have a fantastic comic that I'm eager to share with everyone, a comic that you can read on many online websites right now because it's been out of print for years, or you can head over to eBay and pick up your own copies. I mean, it will be a bit of a challenge, but I was managed to pick up a lot of these comics, and I'm glad that I did, because after reading them online and reading them again and again, these are the kind of books that you read until the cover basically comes off. And this is the kind of comic that was produced many years ago, but many, again, in the industry don't want to talk about it because it doesn't fit their narrative of their social justice and identity politics. But Cat Claw was a cut above as related to quality of storytelling, and I wish this book had gotten a better run during its time in the 90s. Now, my first full comic, John Haynes at Death's Door, is now available on Lulu.com right now, and you can pick up a paper copy for the same price as the 2022 Kickstarter. And my second comic, Esteem No Good Deed, which kicks off the Esteem series, which is his recent book is Horror in the Hamptons, is now available on Amazon.com for 99 cents on Kindle. And you can pick up that book by clicking the link in the description box. And it features fantastic art from Bill Walko that is on the cover of all the ISIS and Esteem books that I produce on SJS Direct. And you can get all those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can get all the books of the SJS Direct universe in paperback and Kindle format on Amazon.com by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to help me get the next comic out, and I really would love to do a comic featuring Isis, the goddess next door, you can send a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all for this comic review as related to this classic comic, Cat Claw. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.
Coming to paperback and e-readers, Esteem Horror in the Hamptons. The aspiring angel tries to escape a house of horrors in this all-new Esteem series adventure. Pre-order your copy of Esteem Horror in the Hamptons in digital format at Amazon.com, Google Play, Draft to Digital, and other digital booksellers, or pick up your paperback copy on May 24th. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Isis, Amari's Revenge. The goddess next door is confronted by a Nubian queen out for revenge at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in this inaugural ISIS series adventure. Get your copy of ISIS Amari's Revenge in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. ISIS, All That Glitters. The goddess next door takes on a bikini-clad bank robber in this action-packed all-new ISIS series adventure. Get ISIS, All That Glitters in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.